In the pale hush of early morning in Araromi, when the mist still clung to the red earth and roosters had only just begun to crow, the village stirred with whispers of a girl named Meera. Before the sun rose fully over Nigeria's horizon, kindness had already begun its quiet battle with cruelty. Meera had not always been hated. Once, she had been known for her gentleness. Her mother, Mama Yemi, had been sick for years. Tuberculosis had hollowed her body slowly, leaving her weak and breathless. Meera cared for her alone. She washed her mother's clothes. She cooked thin soups. She sat beside her through long, painful nights. To survive, Meera sewed. Her fingers were quick and her stitches neat. Women in the village paid her small amounts to mend torn wrappers or stitch school uniforms for their children. The money was never enough, but Meera never complained. She worked quietly, head down, hands moving steadily. Her mother often watched her from the mat on the floor. "You are too kind for this world," Mama Yemi would whisper. "People will take advantage of you." Meera would smile softly. "Kindness is not weakness, Mama." One evening, as rain drummed against the roof, Mama Yemi's breathing became shallow. Meera held her hand tightly. The older woman's eyes were distant, already looking somewhere beyond the room. "Meera," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Kindness never dies. Even when the world forgets you, your kindness will speak." Those were her last words. By morning, Mama Yemi was gone. Meera buried her mother beneath the old mango tree behind their house. She did not cry loudly. She wept silently, alone, as the red earth covered the only person who had ever truly loved her. It began 3 months after her mother's death. Tund, Madame Binta's only son, started appearing at Meera's door. He was tall, handsome, and confident in the way only rich young men can be. His clothes were always clean. His shoes always polished. When he smiled, his teeth were perfect. At first, Meera was confused. Why would someone like him speak to someone like her? But Tund was persistent. He brought her small gifts, a bottle of oil, a bar of soap, once even a new headscarf. He spoke softly, his voice warm and full of promises. "You are different, Meera," he would say. "You are not like the other girls. You are kind. You are real." Meera believed him. How could she not? No one had ever spoken to her that way before. Slowly, carefully, she allowed herself to hope. Perhaps her mother had been wrong. Perhaps kindness could be rewarded in this life. They met in secret. Under the cover of darkness, they spoke for hours. Tund told her about his dreams. She told him about her mother. He held her hand. She felt seen. But then everything changed. One morning, Tund stopped coming. Days passed. Then weeks. When Meera finally saw him again, he was walking through the village with another girl, a girl from a wealthy family. He did not even look at Meera. He walked past her as if she were invisible. The accusation came suddenly. Madame Binta stormed into the village square one afternoon, dragging Meera by the arm. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "This girl," she shouted, pointing at Meera, "tried to trap my son. She claimed he promised to marry her. She threatened to ruin his name unless we paid her." Meera's mouth fell open in shock. "That is not true," she said weakly. "I never." Silence. Madame Binta slapped her across the face. The crowd gasped. Elder Folarin stepped forward, his face grave. "Meera, did you or did you not approach this young man with demands?" "I did not," Meera whispered. Her voice was trembling. "He came to me." "He lies." Madame Binta screamed. "She is a liar and a manipulator." The crowd murmured. Some shook their heads. Others whispered among themselves. No one believed her. How could they? She was poor. She was alone. She had no family to defend her name. And Madame Binta was powerful. The elders conferred quietly. Then Chief Adewale spoke. You will leave this village by sunrise. That is our judgment. Meera's world collapsed. That night, Meera packed her few belongings. A small bag. 2 wrappers. Her mother's old shawl, the only thing she had left of her. The shawl was faded and worn, but Meera could not leave it behind. It smelled faintly of her mother, of safety, of a time when she had been loved. She sat on the floor of her empty room and stared at the walls. The house felt hollow. Everything she had known was here. Her mother's voice. Her childhood. Her hope. And now it was all being taken from her. At dawn, she stood at the edge of the village. The sky was gray and heavy. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Rain was coming. No one came to say goodbye. Not one person. The village that had once known her name now turned its back. Meera wrapped her mother's shawl around her shoulders and began to walk. Her feet were bare. The road was long. She did not know where it would lead. As the first drops of rain began to fall, she whispered a prayer. Not for revenge. Not for justice. Only for strength. Mama, she said softly, help me survive this. The rain fell harder. The village disappeared behind her. And Meera walked into the unknown, alone and afraid, but still alive. The town she reached was larger than her village but colder. No one smiled. No one asked her name. People moved quickly, their eyes focused on their own troubles. Meera was invisible here, just another face in the crowd. She found work cleaning houses. The pay was small, barely enough to buy food. Her employer, a heavy woman named Mrs. Oyinbo, spoke to her harshly. You will scrub every corner. If I find dust anywhere, you will not be paid. Meera worked without complaint. Her hands grew rough. Her back ached. At night, she slept in a small storage room behind the main house. The floor was cold. The air smelled of old soap and mildew. But it was shelter, and she was grateful. Weeks passed. Meera moved through her days like a shadow. She woke before sunrise. She scrubbed floors, washed clothes, and cooked meals she was not allowed to eat. She spoke only when spoken to. She kept her head down. One evening, Mrs. Oyinbo called her into the main room. Her face was twisted with anger. My gold bracelet is missing, she said coldly. I left it on the table this morning. Now it is gone. Meera's heart sank. I did not take it, Ma. Liar. Mrs. Oyinbo's voice rose. You are the only one who enters this room. Who else could it be? Meera shook her head desperately. Please, Ma. I would never. Get out, Mrs. Oyinbo said flatly. You are dismissed. No pay. Leave now before I call the police. Meera stood frozen, her mind spinning. Not again. Not again. Meera left the house with nothing but her small bag and her mother's shawl. The few naira notes she had saved were all she had left. Her hands shook as she counted them. It was not enough. Not even close. She walked through the streets aimlessly, her mind numb. Twice now she had been accused. Twice now she had been cast out. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Was her mother wrong? Did kindness truly matter? Or was the world simply cruel to those who had nothing? She found a small bench near a market and sat down heavily. Her stomach was empty. Her body was tired. She closed her eyes and let the noise of the market wash over her. Vendors shouted. Children laughed. Life continued around her as if she did not exist. That night, she slept on the bench. When morning came, she had no plan. She only knew she had to keep moving. To stop was to give up entirely. She bought a small loaf of bread with her last few coins. It was stale, but she ate it slowly, trying to make it last. When it was gone, she felt even emptier than before. By midday, her vision began to blur. The heat was unbearable. She had not eaten enough. She had not slept well in weeks. Her body was giving up. She stumbled toward a tree for shade, and then the world went dark. When Meera woke, the sun was lower in the sky. Her head throbbed. Her mouth was dry. She tried to sit up, but her arms were weak. Then she heard it. A voice. Weak and strained, calling out. Help, please, someone. Meera's first instinct was fear. This could be a trap. This could be dangerous. Meera's mother's voice echoed in her mind. Kindness never dies. When she reached him, she saw the wound on his side, a deep gash, still bleeding. What happened? She whispered. Robbers, the man gasped. They took everything. Meera looked around. She made a decision. She tore a strip of fabric from her wrapper and pressed it against his wound. Hold this, she said softly. I will find help. Meera used her last few naira to buy basic medicine from a nearby chemist. The man behind the counter looked at her with suspicion, but he took her money and handed her a small bottle of antiseptic and clean bandages. She returned to the stranger and cleaned his wound as best she could. He winced but did not cry out. When she was done, she sat back, exhausted. Why? The man asked, his voice hoarse. Why are you helping me? Meera did not answer immediately. She looked at her hands. Dirty, trembling, empty. Because no one helped me, she said finally. And I know what that feels like. The man studied her face. What is your name? Meera. I am Daniel. They sat in silence for a while. The sun continued to sink. Meera had no plan. She had no money. She had given everything she had left to a stranger. You should not have wasted your money on me, Daniel said quietly. You look like you need it more. Meera shook her head. Money can be found again. A life cannot. Daniel's eyes filled with something she could not name. Respect, perhaps. Or disbelief. He tried to sit up but groaned in pain. Rest, Meera said gently. I will stay with you tonight. She did not know why she said it. She did not know this man. But something in her refused to leave him alone. Perhaps it was her mother's voice. Perhaps it was simply all she had left, her kindness. Daniel recovered slowly over the next few days. Meera found odd jobs nearby, sweeping compounds, fetching water, just enough to buy small amounts of food. She shared everything with him. At night, they spoke quietly. Daniel asked about her life. At first, Meera hesitated. But loneliness had carved a hole in her chest, and the words spilled out. She told him about her mother. About Tund. About the accusations and the exile. She spoke without bitterness, only sadness. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. You are stronger than you know, he said finally. Meera shook her head. I do not feel strong. Strength is not the absence of fear, Daniel replied. It is moving forward despite it. One evening, as the light faded, Daniel noticed the shawl Meera always wore. He reached out and touched the edge of it gently. This pattern, he said slowly. Where did you get this? It was my mother's, Meera replied. Why? Daniel's face changed. His eyes widened slightly. He traced the embroidered symbol at the corner, a small, faded image of a bird with outstretched wings. This symbol, he whispered. I have seen it before. Meera frowned. What do you mean? But Daniel did not answer. He only stared at the shawl, his expression unreadable. It is nothing, he said finally, though his voice was tight. I must have been mistaken. But Meera saw the look in his eyes. He was not mistaken. He knew something. And he was not telling her. Daniel grew stronger each day. He began to help Meera with small tasks, folding clothes, carrying water. He called her sister, and for the first time since her mother's death, Meera felt like she belonged somewhere, even if it was just beside this stranger. They worked together, sewing clothes with fabric scraps Meera had collected. Daniel's hands were steady and skilled. You learned to sew? Meera asked, surprised. My mother taught me, he said quietly. Before she passed. They did not speak much after that. But the silence between them was comfortable, not heavy. One afternoon, a well-dressed man appeared at the place where they had been staying. He was tall, with sharp eyes and expensive shoes. He looked around slowly, as if searching. Daniel, the man called out. Daniel, are you here? Meera turned to Daniel, confused. But Daniel's face had gone pale. Stay here, he said quickly. He stood and walked toward the man. They spoke in low voices, too quiet for Meera to hear. The man gestured urgently. Daniel shook his head. After several minutes, the man left. Daniel returned, but he would not meet Meera's eyes. Who was that? She asked. No one important, Daniel said. But his voice was strained. That night, Meera could not sleep. Something had changed. She felt it in the air, in the way Daniel moved, in the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching. Meera woke to find Daniel gone. The space where he slept was empty. His few belongings were missing. The only thing he left behind was a small folded note, placed carefully on top of her mother's shawl. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The handwriting was neat and careful. Meera, your kindness saved more than you know. I will never forget what you did for me. I am sorry I could not explain. But I promise you, your story is not over. D***. Meera read the note 3 times. Her chest felt hollow. He was gone. Just like Tund. Just like everyone else. She sat there for a long time, staring at the words. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel betrayed. But all she felt was tired. She folded the note carefully and placed it inside her bag. Then she stood, wrapped her mother's shawl around her shoulders, and began walking again. There was no point in staying. Meera found work again, this time at a small tailoring shop. The owner, an older woman named Mama Kemi, was not unkind, but she was strict. You will work hard, she said. No mistakes. No laziness. Meera nodded. She was used to harsh words by now. They no longer stung the way they once had. She sewed quietly, her fingers moving quickly over the fabric. The other workers whispered among themselves but rarely spoke to her. She was the outsider again. The stranger. The one who did not belong. One afternoon, a customer's money went missing from the counter. Mama Kemi's face darkened. She looked around the room slowly, her eyes landing on Meera. Did you take it? She asked coldly. Meera's stomach dropped. Not again. Please, not again. No, Ma, she said quietly. I did not. You are the newest worker here, Mama Kemi said. And money does not disappear on its own. Meera felt the familiar weight of accusation settle over her. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but what was the point? No one ever believed her. They never had. That night, she sat beneath a palm tree outside the shop. The stars were bright above her. The air was cool. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not for justice, but simply for strength to keep going. "Mama," she said softly. "I do not know how much more I can carry." The next morning, a man appeared at the shop. He was well dressed, his posture confident. He asked for Meera by name. Mama Kemi frowned. "What do you want with her?" The man smiled politely. "I have a message." He handed Meera a brown envelope. Inside was a letter and a small bundle of cash. Meera's hands shook as she read the letter. "You are invited to open your own sewing shop. The building has been secured. The supplies have been arranged. All you need to do is accept. Consider this repayment for a kindness once shown. D***. Meera stared at the letter in disbelief. Her heart pounded. This could not be real. This had to be a mistake. "Is this some kind of joke?" she whispered. The man shook his head. "No, miss. The offer is genuine. The address is written on the back." Meera turned the letter over. An address was written in neat handwriting. It was in a better part of town, far from where she had been staying. She looked up at the man. "Who sent you?" The man only smiled. "Someone who believes you deserve more than accusations." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Meera standing there, clutching the letter, her mind spinning. She did not understand. She did not know who Daniel truly was or why he had done this. But for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Meera opened her sewing shop 3 weeks later. The building was small but clean. The machines were new. Bright yellow fabric hung in the window, catching the sunlight. She stitched carefully, her work neat and precise, just as her mother had taught her. Word spread quickly. Women came to see her work. They admired the clean lines, the careful details. Orders began to come in. Slowly at first, then more steadily. Meera worked long hours, but she did not mind. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt like herself again. She felt useful. She felt seen. One afternoon, as she was folding fabric, a shadow fell across the doorway. She looked up and froze. Standing in the entrance was Elder Folklore, one of the men who had judged her in the village square. His face was older now, more worn. His eyes were troubled. "Meera," he said quietly. "May I speak with you?" Meera's heart pounded. She wanted to tell him to leave. She wanted to slam the door in his face. But she only nodded. Elder Folklore stepped inside slowly. He looked around the shop, his expression unreadable. "You have done well for yourself," he said. Meera said nothing. She waited. Elder Folklore sighed heavily. "I came to tell you the truth," he said. "The truth about what happened in the village." Meera's hands stilled. She looked at him carefully. "What truth?" "The accusation against you," Elder Folklore said quietly. "It was planned." Elder Folklore's voice was low and shaking. "Madam Binta paid people to lie. She paid me. She paid others. She wanted you gone because Tund had been seeing you, and she could not allow her son to marry someone poor." Meera felt the floor tilt beneath her. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew I was innocent, and you still let them cast me out." Elder Folklore lowered his head. "I was afraid. Madam Binta has power. She has money. She threatened to ruin anyone who spoke against her. So you ruined me instead," Meera said, her voice hollow. Elder Folklore flinched. "I came to ask for forgiveness. I know I do not deserve it. But I could not carry this weight anymore." Meera stared at him for a long time. She wanted to scream. She wanted to weep. She wanted to demand answers for all the pain she had endured. But instead, she only felt tired. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked quietly. Chief Adewale did not answer immediately. Instead, his eyes moved to the shawl draped over the back of a chair, her mother's shawl. He stepped closer and touched the fabric gently, his fingers tracing the embroidered bird symbol. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It was my mother's," Meera replied. "She had it as long as I can remember." Chief Adewale's face changed. Something raw and painful flickered across his features. "What was your mother's full name?" he asked. "Yemisi," Meera said slowly. "Yemisi Adebayo." The chief's hand trembled. He withdrew it from the shawl as if it had burned him. "Adebayo," he repeated softly. "That was my sister's married name." Meera's breath caught. She stared at him, her mind racing. "Your sister?" Chief Adewale nodded slowly. "She disappeared many years ago. We searched for her everywhere. We never found her. I thought she was dead." He looked at Meera with new eyes filled with something that looked like grief. "If your mother was Yemisi Adebayo, then you are my niece." Meera could not speak. The words hung in the air, impossibly heavy. Niece. Family. Connection. Everything she had believed about herself, about her mother's past, had just shifted. "My mother never spoke of family," Meera said finally, her voice shaking. "She said we had no one." Chief Adewale's jaw tightened. "That is because I drove her away. She fell in love with a poor man, your father. I forbade the marriage. I told her she was disgracing our family. She left in the night, and I never saw her again." His voice cracked. "I was too proud. Too foolish. And by the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. She was gone." Meera felt something break inside her chest. All those years, her mother had carried that pain alone. All those years, she had been cast out by her own brother. "She died believing she had no family," Meera whispered. "She died alone." Chief Adewale closed his eyes. "I know. And that shame will follow me to my grave." He opened his eyes and looked at Meera directly. "But you are not alone. Not anymore. You are my blood. And I have come to ask you to return to the village." Meera shook her head. "Why would I return to a place that destroyed me?" "Because the truth must be told," Chief Adewale said firmly. "And because you deserve justice." Meera stood at the edge of the village once again. The same red dirt road. The same trees. The same houses. But this time, she was not running away. This time, she was walking forward. Her shoulders were straight. Her head was high. She was no longer the broken girl who had left in shame. "Is that Meera?" someone whispered. "What is she doing back here?" Meera walked through the village slowly. She did not look left or right. She only moved forward, toward the village square where it had all begun. Chief Adewale was already there, standing beside the same wooden benches where the elders had once sat in judgment. This time, the entire village had been summoned. Madam Binta stood near the front, her face pale. Tun stood beside her, his eyes wide with fear. Meera stopped in the center of the square. She looked around at the faces that had once condemned her. Some looked ashamed. Others looked confused. But all of them were silent. Chief Adewale raised his hand. "We are gathered here today to correct a great wrong." The crowd murmured. Chief Adewale's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Silence," he commanded. The murmuring stopped instantly. He gestured toward the side of the square. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. Meera's breath caught. It was Daniel. But he was not the wounded stranger she had helped. He looked like someone important. Someone powerful. This, Chief Adewale said, is my younger brother, Daniel Adewale. Some of you may remember him. He left this village many years ago to pursue education abroad. He has returned. The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted again. Daniel Adewale. The chief's brother. The man who had become successful in the city. Meera stared at Daniel in shock. He met her eyes and smiled gently. I was attacked by robbers on my way back to this village, Daniel said, his voice carrying across the square. I was left for dead. And this woman, Meera, saved my life. She gave me her last money. She cared for me when she had nothing. She did not know who I was. She helped me because it was right. He turned to face the crowd. And while she showed me kindness, this village showed her cruelty. You accused her falsely. You cast her out. You destroyed her name. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people lowered their heads. But today, Daniel continued, the truth will be spoken. Daniel pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I have investigated what happened here. And I have evidence. He handed the paper to Chief Adewale, who read it aloud. It was a signed confession, from a man who had been paid by Madam Binta to lie about Meera. The crowd erupted. Voices rose in shock and anger. Madam Binta stumbled backward, her face draining of color. This is a lie, she shouted desperately. This is revenge. No, Daniel said calmly. This is justice. He turned to Tund. And you? You were the one who courted Meera in secret. You made her promises. Then you abandoned her to protect your reputation. Tund's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. But it was not just cowardice, Daniel continued, his voice hardening. You were also stealing. You took money meant for village development projects and used it for yourself. You forged documents. You lied to cover your tracks. And when Meera became a problem, your mother paid people to destroy her. Gasps filled the square. People turned to stare at Tund with horror. Chief Adewale's face was stone. Is this true? Tund's knees buckled. He fell forward, his hands shaking. I did not mean. Silence, Chief Adewale said coldly. You will be taken to the authorities. You will answer for your crimes. Two men stepped forward and took Tund by the arms. He did not resist. He only hung his head as they led him away. Madam Binta collapsed to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. Please, she sobbed. Please, I was only protecting my son. I did not know. You knew exactly what you were doing, Chief Adewale said. His voice was ice. You destroyed an innocent girl to protect a thief. Madam Binta wept loudly, her hands covering her face. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Chief Adewale turned to Meera. His expression softened. There is more you need to know. He gestured to another man, who brought forward a leather folder. Chief Adewale opened it carefully. Your mother, Yemisi, was my sister. Before she left, our father gave her a portion of land as her inheritance. She never claimed it because she was too proud. But the land was legally hers. He pulled out a deed, old, faded, but official. This land, he continued, is the same land that Madam Binta's family has been living on for the past 20 years. They built their house there. They have profited from it. But it was never theirs. The crowd gasped again. Madam Binta's face went white. According to law, Chief Adewale said, this land now belongs to Meera. It is her inheritance. Meera felt the world tilt. She looked at the deed, then at Madam Binta, then at the chief. I own the land she lives on, she whispered. Yes, Chief Adewale said. The choice of what to do with it is now yours." The square fell silent. Every eye turned to Meera. Madame Binta knelt on the ground, her body shaking with sobs. The woman who had once stood over Meera with power and fury now looked small and broken. Meera stood still, her mind racing. She thought of all the pain. All the nights spent hungry. All the accusations. All the shame. This was her moment. She could take everything from Madame Binta. She could demand repayment. She could watch her enemy fall the way she had once fallen. But then she heard her mother's voice, soft and clear in her memory. "Kindness never dies." Asterisk. Meera stepped forward slowly. She knelt down in front of Madame Binta, meeting her tear-filled eyes. "You destroyed my name," Meera said quietly. "You cast me out. You made me suffer." Madame Binta sobbed harder. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." Meera took a deep breath. "But I will not do to you what you did to me." She stood and turned to Chief Adewale. "I forgive her. And I will not take the land." The crowd gasped. Even Chief Adewale looked surprised. Instead, Meera continued, her voice steady, "I want the land to be used for something good." Madame Binta looked up at her in disbelief. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you show me mercy?" Meera smiled faintly. "Because mercy is stronger than revenge." The village erupted in murmurs. Some people shook their heads in amazement. Others wept openly. Chief Adewale stepped forward and placed a hand on Meera's shoulder. "You are wiser than I ever was," he said softly. In the days that followed, the village transformed. Madame Binta publicly apologized to Meera in front of everyone. She knelt and wept, asking for forgiveness she did not deserve but received anyway. Tund was taken to the authorities. The stolen money was recovered. Justice, slow and painful, finally arrived. The land was cleared. Construction began. A school rose where Madame Binta's house had once stood. A small clinic was built beside it. The village, which had once been a place of cruelty, began to change. Meera did not stay in the village. She returned to her sewing shop in the town. But she visited often, watching the construction, watching the children who would one day learn in a building that her mercy had made possible. Daniel visited her often as well. Not as a stranger. Not as a rescuer. But as a partner. "I want to help you grow your business," he said one afternoon. "Not because I owe you. But because I believe in what you are building." Meera smiled. "And what am I building?" "A life," Daniel said simply. "One stitch at a time." Years passed. Meera's sewing shop grew into a successful business. She trained young women, teaching them the craft her mother had taught her. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Meera sat outside her shop. She held her mother's shawl in her lap, running her fingers over the embroidered bird. "Mama," she whispered, "you were right. Kindness never dies. Kindness is not weakness. It is the strongest thing a person can carry. And it never, ever dies." Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever shown kindness when no one was watching? What happened later?